Okay, let's give you just a sense of how we're trading right now in Lagos. The Nigerian market is down about 0.2% in the water. MTN Nigeria, one of the largest listed company, is down about 1.15%. The second largest brewer by market cap, that's Guinness Nigeria, is also down 1.22%. Those two big companies are dragging the all-share index by about 0.17%. This day, the market is still short of any news aside those news around board of directors meetings and all the earnings meetings that will precede our own third quarter earnings period, which should start anytime from the final week of October or at least by the first week of November. So it's a bit quiet on the Lagos market. Nigerian market down 0.17%. No big news on the radar. But that's here in Lagos. But in Abuja is a big news around President Buhari's expectations to deliver budget 2020 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That was a timeline that was sent out, and we're live here to everyone to that. We have some of analysts who will be speaking to us here on this program, on this special programming, on what the budget means for the economy, but to drill down not just into the budget numbers, but to drill down on the economy. This is a very critical year. President Buhari's first budget in a second term tenure, which is currently running. Let's bring in Yomi Olugbero, who is our partner in West Africa, tax lead at Deloitte Nigeria, is live here with me at our Lagos headquarters studios. Thank you so much, Yomi. It's good to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
It's been very, very naughty getting in here. How bad is the vehicular snarl around the city?
No, it's very, very heavy. It's bumper to bumper. At some point, I was going to make a clearance call to you to send a shopper to bring me down here.
I used the motorbike a few days ago on Friday last week. Perhaps you could have used a motorbike.
I was tempted to look in the direction of those bikemen moving around, but somehow we succeeded in navigating the.
What exactly is wrong?
Can you tell? When Lagos gets you down on traffic, you probably can tell exactly why.
You sit at what floor were you at, or your building down?
Yeah, on the 15th floor.
15th floor.
Yeah.
So you can see the Third Mainland Bridge.
That's correct.
And right in front of you at the other side of Victoria Island is that very major highway through Victoria Island all the way to Lekki. And sometimes you stand there or you sit there and you're wondering what the vehicular traffic is all there every day, downtown.
Yeah, it can be heavy, but I must say that this afternoon, as I planned to set out of the office, the traffic wasn't that heavy on the island, particularly from the side where I sit, until we moved, towards the mainland part of town. So, but I guess the downpour in the morning, I think there was some showers in the morning, could have contributed badly to the traffic situation, with also the potholes and all of that.
Quite a situation about what we need to fix what you call infrastructure or urban development. So let's start this conversation. If we had an opportunity to speak to Mr. President, to speak to Lagos State, where is our urban development bank? I thought we had one a long time ago. Is it still there? We had an infrastructure bank as well.
That's a long time ago. I think the whole conversation around understanding the impact of the wastages and the amount of resources that is going down the drain with the depth of our infrastructure is quite heavy. You see so much of resources, just getting down the drain because goods can be transported, people can move very, very swiftly to their places of work, and I mean, we just can't quantify the impact of all of that in the economy.
Very interesting. Yomi Olugbero, thank you so much for making it in here. We're still expecting a few other guests to join us on the conversation, but let's go live to our Abuja studios to speak very quickly and get a sense of their expectations of today's Mr. President budget presentation and the analysis. Tafa Abraham is a financial and development economist, as well as Eze Onyekwere, lead director at the Center for Social Justice. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being part of the program.
My pleasure.
Thank you. It's good to have you. So, Tafa Abraham, let's have your sense as a financial and development economist. Give us a sense of the road that we've traveled to this 2020 budget. This was 1 year. Over the last 10 years or 12 years, it's been a sing-song, at least for the last 2 or 3 administrations, about the year 2020 We are now there less than 90 days.
Okay, thank you again for this opportunity. This administration has been guided by the Economic and Recovery Growth Plans from 2017 to 2020. What this administration did in 2016, when there was no ERGP, was to immediately put in motion the strategic implementation plan to guide the implementation of the 2016 budget. So, and if you look at that trajectory from which this administration has sustained the implementation of its economic policy as guided by the ERGP, you see that it helped to bring the economy out of recession that it was experienced in 2016. The previous administration that had a lot of oil revenue, this administration didn't have that privilege. So looking at its economic management policies was really a tight option for this administration. So as we go forward to this 2020 budget, I expect to see continuous expansion in government spending and another round of extending the lifespan of the ERGP, because 2020 is here. I look forward to seeing another ERGP, maybe called a different name, that will cover the period of 2020 to perhaps 2023. All
right, Tafa Abraham, and of course, Eze Oyekpere, thank you, gentlemen, and of course, here in Lagos, Yomi Olugbero. Stand by, everyone. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. This is the second part of Business Incorporated. This big day for Nigeria's Budget 2020 presentation by Mr. President, expected in a couple of minutes from now, as scheduled 2 o'clock local time. But our panelists will be charting to the state of the economy and the budget and try to contextualize 2020 appropriations within this space of the economy that we are working on, and the future, and what has been said by the government, and what is in it for everyone, in particular what you need to prepare for moving forward. Yomi Olugbero, who is a partner and West Africa tax lead at Deloitte Nigeria, is live in the studio with us at our global headquarters in Lagos. Also, from our Abuja studios, Eze Oyekpere, who is a director at Center for Social Justice, as well as Abraham, who is joining us as a financial and economic development economist. Thank you, gentlemen, in Abuja. Let's get a soundbite from Eze Oyekpere right now. When you look at the state of the economy 2016, 2017, 2019, and we're preparing for 2020 budget, my earlier question before the break, we talked about Vision 2020, Vision 2020 over the last two administrations. So, year 2020 has been in our crosshairs before today. Now that we are here at the doorstep of this magical year, quote unquote, 2020, what comes to your mind?
Well, nothing much but the continuation of the norm as we've had it from the beginning. If you recall, even the year 2000 was supposed to be a magical year. Okay, we crossed 2000 and nothing happened. We had Abacha shift the goalpost to the year 2010, and 2010 came and nothing happened. We had the Millennium Development Goals, which ended in 2015, and 2015 came and nothing happened. Of course, we've shifted the goalpost through the SDGs to the year 2030. So tomorrow will come. I don't see so much significance in that 2020 budget, because what is going to be in that budget and this outcome is beyond the budget documents and the paper. It's about extra macroeconomic indicators and whatever policies are in place that will either improve or worsen the living conditions of Nigerians. But from the little we can see in the MTEF, it doesn't appear there is so much hope, unless we are going to rejig a lot of things to begin to infuse hope into the economy, particularly considering that other countries in Africa, Ghana and co, are growing at 6, 7, 8%, and we are simply managing a miserly 2% when our population growth is almost 3%. So there's a lot of challenges. I think this should be a budget of reawakening for us to understand that we are so far behind. We are virtually people left far behind in time and space. So we need to have a new trajectory which catapults us to the forefront, which understand we are so far behind. Therefore, we need to increase our pace of development, increase our pace of growth, increase the pace of building new infrastructure, social services, and all what you have.
We need a budget, whichever situation we find ourselves. Even countries whose economy is underwater, such as Zimbabwe and Venezuela, still need to have a budget. So, Abraham, Tefa, let me ask you this question. What do you think the biggest challenges are for the Buhari's administration in terms of making a budget work?
Well, the biggest challenge, because the budget is all about public spending in targeted areas of priority investment. The ERGP made mention of 6 sectors for which this administration seeks to prioritize, and agriculture is one of them. Health is another. But if you look at the challenge of insecurity, to implement this, to achieve the implementation target for those priority sectors, the government spending must extend to rural areas, to communities, to hard-to-reach areas that are to date threatened by security challenges. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, the challenge of having funds to meet up with its expected deficit has been a major challenge for Buhari's administration in terms of funding the budget. If you look at when they started in 2015, 16, 17, they included a whole lot of sources of financing the deficit. But for the 2020 budget, as we see in the MTF, you have just like, I think, 5 sources. You have proceeds from privatization, you have foreign borrowing, you have signature bonus, you have another one from sale of non-oil assets, and you have one other from borrowing from multilateral from multilateral institutions. Just 5, compared to 2016, 17, and 17, where they had a long list, including recoveries from misappropriated funds and loots. These were part of sources of funding 2016 and 2017 budget by this administration. But in 2020, if you take a quick look at the MTF, misappropriation, funds from misappropriated recoveries has now been exempted. So basically, having the revenue to fund its deficit and putting in place a framework to convert recovery from loot and misappropriated funds into the Consolidated Revenue Fund, as it were, in other words, to get them to fund specific projects has been a major challenge.
So I'm going to ask Yomi Olugbero, who is with me here at our headquarters in Lagos, for his thoughts on this. In terms of macroeconomic headwinds, you heard those 2 gentlemen. The biggest headwinds, the trilemma of debt, revenue, and expenditure. This is the unholy trinity, as it were, or if you want to call it the triad, which this administration faces. How to balance this?
That's correct. And within that tripod, I think the revenue challenge is a major one. It's huge because it has an impact on, capacity to service our debt or how much is available to finance capital infrastructure, for example. If you look at the current 2019, for example, as at the end of the half year, as at the end of June, the federal government had only been able to generate less than 60% of its prorated targeted revenue for the period. We've made just about 2 trillion from 3.5 trillion that was budgeted for the same period. And I mean, if you look at the rest of on the expenditure side, we seem to be tracking on budget. We've done well over 76% of non-debt recurrent. We're moving on with our debt service.
You are in the advisory business. So if this is a company, a corporate entity, and is brought to Deloitte, Nigeria, and say, look, we have this trilemma. This is our debt. This is our revenue, very sluggish, and this is our expenditure, moving very fast. How do we reduce debt, raise revenue, and make sure that our expenditure is in tune with our revenue and our debt? We need investment as well. How would you advise?
Well, there's no silver bullet to answering this. The federal government needs to be pulling on multiple levers at the same time. But the first thing is to realize that there is a revenue crisis, and a huge one at that. Now, every other action and intervention needs to be weaved around how do we do this in a sustainable manner, in a way that we don't kill the economy, in a way that we, while trying to get more, we also recognize the fact that the vast majority are, living below the line. So a whole lot of things need to be happening. And sometimes when you look at the responses from the government, it seems like we think just one response is sufficient to address all of that. So, for example, the government knows, and we've had that repeated by several leaders of the government, that there's a revenue shortage. But if all you do is to, say, raise taxes, on the one hand, that won't resolve all of the issue, because you're only going to be compounding the woes of those who are at the bottom. So things need to be moving on both sides almost at the same time. So taxes probably need to be lowered for the bottom, for those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, and you need to raise it for those who are at the upper end, and you need to be doing a whole lot around efficiency, around compliance. It needs to be a complete total reform. And can't be this kind of haphazard responses.
Let's go to the side of the expenditure. The conversation on the streets right now is that government seems to be focused more, 99% on revenue, and less on expenditure, whether it's for the National Assembly or for the executive branch.
That's absolutely right. So we need to raise more revenue, but we also need to cut wastages. We need to look critically at, our non-capital spending. The amount of expenditure going to non-debt recurrent expenditure is just not sustainable. And we just seem to believe that we can continue as business as usual and try to raise the revenue.
We think we can use revenue to offset expenditure that we're not willing to cut back on. That's the thing.
That seems to be the thinking
on the fiscal side.
But we need to make sure, we need to realize that at the current level we're growing, even with all of the effort and initiative at growing the revenue, we can't possibly sustain the level of spending on the non-debt side.
If we begin recover assets, if we do massive privatization and we sell some assets and we get cash, you think this is still not enough?
I don't think it's enough. I think a lot still needs to happen on the personnel cost side and all of the, the total overhead going to non-capital completely. The sizes of government bureaucracy that we're maintaining in this, in this country is not sustainable. We need to be asking some very critical questions. Do we need this number of agencies? Do we need, do we look at our National Assembly, for example? Are there things we could do within that particular space to fit our structure?
You think we should look at furniture and fittings, cars, tea and coffee? No, we're going to serve you a bit of that.
No, all of this happened. If you go to corporates where they're facing serious revenue crisis, they cut they cut it down to even the tissue paper and the survey that you use in your offices.
Okay, we will talk about that. It's been quite some time I visited you. I don't know if you guys have cut the size of your coffee or tea at Deloitte Nigeria. Everyone, that's all on Business Incorporated, this special edition. President Buhari making his presidential speech for 2020 budget within the next couple of minutes. We thank you, everyone. Stand by. We'll see you pretty soon.